So we have it out of the hot box at this point, and the glue has set. So we're just going to take it out of the form, take a quick look at it, and then on to the next phase. Alright, so with the clamps and the wedges off, we can take these backing strips off, just set them to one side. And now we want to see if we can pop the bow out of the form, like so. So there it is, out of the form. The shape is looking good. If we just look down it, so far so good. The back of the bow, sorry, the bell, we're going to put through a table saw to trim it down. And if there are any of these little pieces of glue preventing it from being flat, we'll get an uneven cut. You know, it's going to go this way through the table saw. So we want to get all of these little pieces taken off with the rasp first before we do that. So when we have all of this cleaned up, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to cut it to the exact length. I'm going to put the tips on, we're going to put the tip overlays on here, and we're going to put the handle overlay on, and at that point we'll start trimming it down. Okay, so with that cleaned down a bit, what we've now got is we've put a mark here, which is the exact 900 from the centre mark. From the centre mark coming right the way down, 900, we have a line across, and we want to cut that off. And a junior hacksaw seems to be the best thing to do that with. That'll cut through the fiberglass okay, and the laminates underneath are very thin at this point, so a little bit of perseverance with this and it should get it off. Okay, and the same with the other side, from the centre point, 900 down, and cut that off. Now having the tips cut here, flat, the very first thing that we want to do is just pry off enough of this masking tape to allow ourselves to put the tip on. So we want it down to about here where the finger is. And if you can possibly get this off in one go without ripping it, it's a good idea, because then we can stick that back on over the top of the tip once it's dried. That's sufficient. We can put that back on like so, and that will give us the lines to trim down with. So having taken that off, the next thing we want to do is just rough the surface of the fiberglass to make a key for the resin, and I'm going to do that with this rasp. There's a few ways. You could probably do this with sandpaper, but I found the rasp works quite well. We just don't want to overdo it here. We want to get the exact point where that tip is going to be, and from that point on just take some of the surface off the fiberglass so that it has a decent key for the epoxy resin. Again, we're going to use a quick drying epoxy to put this on. And also, of course, remembering that when we cut this down, there's only going to be about 16mm of this tip left. So we need some epoxy resin here. This is just a quick 2-part epoxy resin. Just a small amount of that. Just fast drying. Now, if we have a mixer somewhere, that will do. We want to mix that up. That's looking good. and we want to just make sure the tip's good. That's all good. We're going to put the glue on this side. So we just want a coating of the resin on the tip, if you can see that. Like so, make sure it's all covered. Then we're going to put that on the tip, square it all up. One thing I've forgotten is cling film. A little bit of this cling film is always a good idea, otherwise the scrap wood that we're using to protect the tip will inevitably stick to the tip itself. So we just want to cut a little piece of that off. There it is. So we want to put the cling film around it. We have a little piece of scrap wood to put underneath for the clamping. Then we have a piece of fairly flexible wood here that we're going to put on top of that. And then we may just put another piece of ply on top so it can take some pressure from the clamp. Alright, now that in place, we just want to put a clamp on there. Clamp it all together centrally. You could put a couple of clamps on if you wish. I normally find that one will do this. This epoxy resin is pretty good stuff. Make sure all squared up before applying the final pressure. And that should do. Once that's gone off, that tip should be in place. So we're going to flip the bowl around and do exactly the same thing on this side. Okay, so now we're going to put this handle overlay in here. The tips, by the way, are 8 centimeters long, 80 millimeters long. I neglected to say that earlier, so there it is. This piece here, which we're going to use as the handle overlay, is 180 millimeters long, and I've just chamfered this off on either side. You can use a straight one if you wish, it's just personal taste. So I'm going to put this over the middle of the handle section. Now I say the middle of the handle section, it's not exactly the middle. If I get a ruler here, what I want to do is place it from the centre mark here. I'm going to make a mark 50 up from there, and we're going to go .130 down. Now that should fit between those two marks, which it does, and this sort of designates the top limb and the bottom limb of the bow. The arrow shelf is going to be cut in around this mark here. So to prep that, what we want to do first of all is take off again some of this paper, and the best way I found to do this is if we just cut it and then try to find the corner of it, which is there in this case, and we want to pull that off. Again, it doesn't really matter that we'll get this off in one go, because we're not going to use this, we're not going to put this back on, so that will be fine. Okay, so with this part now cleared of the masking tape, we can put this overlay on and we can line it up with the centre mark, the point of it with the centre mark, if you're doing a tapered one like this. I mean, as I say, you can also just put a straight one on if you wish, but I'm going to mark that with a pencil because we want to rough this area up a little bit just to allow the epoxy resin to take a hold to the glass. And we're going to do that again with a rasp. This datum peg here, I've cut that off just with a little hacksaw, and you might be able to see across here, this is the join in the maple that we had from gluing it all up, and that handle section is going to cover that up so it's not going to be seen. So first of all, I'm just going to take that datum peg absolutely flat with the rasp and then rough up the area where we're going to put the handle overlay. Now the tricky thing here is getting it, if you're using one of these shaped handle overlays, we want to get into that area, but we don't want to scratch any of the surface other than that, which is going to be covered by the handle overlay itself. Otherwise we'll find these scratches quite difficult to get out of the fiberglass later. So you want to be fairly careful with that, just keep it within the lines that we've just marked. And that should be fine. You could do this with a piece of coarse sandpaper, but I've just gotten used to doing it with a rasp and that seems to work out for me. So that being cleared, we can again mix up a little bit more of this resin and glue the handle overlay on, just like that. Now I have cling film over here, and we'll need the knife. Alright, so we put the cling film over there. I have a little piece of scrap wood which is cut almost to the same size. We'll put that on and then put the first clamp in. Again, with resin and doing it on this fiberglass, this is going to move somewhat. So we want to be pretty good with that. We want to be pretty careful with it. Make sure that it doesn't go out of alignment too much whilst clamping it down. And that should be it. We have the handle overlay secured into place, and we have the Purple Heart tips glued and clamped on. Now we're going to let that go off, let that so it's nice and solid, and then we will start trimming this down to the lines that we put on earlier. Okay?